In 1913, a man named Raymond Weil was the first Jewish archaeologist to excavate in the most ancient part of Jerusalem.
Since at least the 19th century, archaeologists and scholars have sought and debated the location of these early royal tombs. Many today assume that these burial sites were destroyed during the many stages of building and development as Jerusalem grew from a small Ironaic settlement into others argue that neither David nor his tomb ever existed at all. So surprisingly, scientists have unearthed what they believe to be the long-lost tomb of King David, which was lost for thousands of years. Get ready to be shocked as we reveal the discovery of the century. What is King David best known for in ancient Israel? A. Building the temple in Jerusalem. B. Conquering Babylon. C. Establishing Jerusalem as the capital. D. Leading the Israelites out of Egypt. Time to think and remember to answer below. We will discuss this further. Surely you all have the answer, right? Can't wait to see yours. The answer will be revealed in the following part. Let's wait for it. King David was a shepherd boy who became Israel's third and most important king. But what makes David such a significant biblical figure is his role in establishing God's earthly headquarters in Jerusalem. Despite his glaring flaws, David is described as a man after God's own heart. David was far from perfect, but his faith and zeal made him the standard against which all Israel's future kings would be measured. The tomb of King David has been found. King David is primarily known for establishing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. He conquered the city of Jebus, which became Jerusalem, and made it the political and religious center of the kingdom. While David desired to build a temple in Jerusalem, it was his son Solomon who ultimately constructed the first temple. Of course, he didn't lead the Israelites out of Egypt or conquered Babylon. According to the Old Testament, King David was buried within the city of David, as were many kings of Judah after him. In 1913, a French Jewish scholar named Raymond Weil was commissioned to excavate in the city of David, and specifically the estimated site of the royal tombs. Weil utilized the biblical data summarized above to mark out a region in which to dig. He also noted what previous scholars had observed, that the water channel made in the days of King Hezekiah takes an unusually large loop in its route, as if to avoid or go around something. Weil favored the hypothesis of Clermont-Ganneau, previous scholars working in the area, that Hezekiah's tunnel may have had to loop around the site of the royal tombs. Finding that the region indicated by 1 Kings and Nehemiah roughly matched the area avoided by the water channel, Weil selected this site and the wider surrounding area to commence his dig. Among his discoveries, Weil found a series of 8 structures that he interpreted to be tombs, labeled T1 through T8. Of these, the most significant were T1, T2, and T3. The most magnificent of these tombs is T1. It is a kind of long tunnel or artificially excavated cave, 52.5 feet long, over 8 feet wide, and over 13 feet high at the front, lowering to over 6 feet at the back. The original appearance of the entrance is difficult to tell because it was hacked away long ago, along with much of one side. But at the back wall is a carefully cut depression for a body, or perhaps a sarcophagus or coffin. Further north, T3 appears to be a smaller version of T1. T2 was another long cave, but almost nothing remained of it. These structures and the surrounding area were in bad shape, missing entire portions. The Romans had dug up the whole region during the reign of Hadrian in the 2nd century to use the stone in remaking Jerusalem into the Greco-Roman city of Aelia Capitolina, and much was lost or damaged in the process. Still, located precisely where the biblical text indicated they would be, Weil concluded that these were what was left of the royal tombs of the house of David. There is a thing that we need to take note. Whether the tomb discovered by scientists is really King David's tomb or not, it cannot change the fact that King David will be resurrected when Israel is elevated above all other nations. It's clear if you read Jeremiah chapter 30, verses 8 to 9. Verse 8 refers to Israel, verse 9 to King David. For it shall come to pass in that day, saith the Lord of hosts, that I will break his yoke from off thy neck, and will burst thy bonds, and strangers shall no more serve themselves of him, but they shall serve the Lord their God, and David their king, whom I will raise up unto them. Critical doubt. Back to the discovery of scientists about King David's tomb. These man-made cave-like structures are rather unique. Later scholars, highly skeptical of Weil's hypothesis, nevertheless have difficulty determining just what they are. As famed archaeologist Kathleen Kenyon explains regarding the two most prominent of them, according to this scientist's view, she said, "The particular cuttings revealed by Weil were certainly unusual, consisting of two rock-cut tunnels side by side. They are not like any observed cisterns, though the plaster that covers the rock shows that they were at some stage used as cisterns. They are also not like any known tombs of the period. My own view is that there is absolutely no evidence that they were the much searched for royal tombs, and that they were probably cisterns." She admits in the same paragraph that her position is theory only. It is as unsupported by evidence as Weil's identification of the tunnels as the royal tombs. Others have guessed that they were some kind of storage rooms or even ancient wine cellars. What these scholars all agree on, however, is that whatever the tunnels are, they are not the tombs of early Davidic kings. They arrive at this through three basic propositions. First, the structures are probably not tombs. Second, even if they are tombs, they are not old enough to be David's. Third, even if they were tombs and old enough, they were too plain to be royal tombs. They thus conclude that Weil simply saw what he wanted to see, but was sadly mistaken. Some more recent scholars, however, have begun to question these claims, as well as the conclusion to which they lead. Could Weil have been right all along? Were the tombs of the house of David actually discovered over 100 years ago? Let's look at what we know. The Bible said that the tombs of David and some of his early royal descendants were made within the city of David. Further, Nehemiah gave some indication of in what part of the city they were located. More circumstantially, Hezekiah's tunnel was dug in an unnecessarily long and roundabout loop, seemingly to go around something in the very same place that Nehemiah would lead us to suspect the royal tombs would be. Raymond Weil followed this data, excavating that spot and finding a series of man-made caves or tunnels that don't precisely match the design of any known tomb, cistern, cellar, or other work of ancient architecture, but that have certain features, such as the carefully cut depression in the back, that can be interpreted and are by some as a place designed for a body or coffin to lay. Kenyon claims that there is absolutely no evidence that these are the Davidic royal tombs. However, given that they contain features that resemble those of tombs and have no obvious alternative function or origin, the very fact that they are located exactly where the ancient sources say the tombs of the house of David would be is evidence. If you dig up a unique structure and you are not sure what it is, looking at ancient literature to find out what early records show was built, there is a good scholarly approach to solving the mystery. That Weil looked at the ancient literature first and dug up the structure afterward doesn't alter the validity of that evidence. Thus, while the particular design of the tunnels Weil unearthed is unique, they fit nicely into the wider tradition of Near Eastern royal and aristocratic tombs in David's era. Contrary to the critics' claims, what facts we have point toward rather than away from the idea that these are the tombs of David and the early kings of Judah. This, combined with the fact that they are located exactly where the Bible indicates the Davidic tombs we made, puts us on very reasonable ground to conclude that Weil was correct all along. Rating the tombs. Here is how Josephus, the famous first-century Jewish historian, described King David's burial. He was buried by his son Solomon in Jerusalem with great magnificence and with all the other funeral pomp which kings use to be buried with. Moreover, he had great and immense wealth buried with him. The wealth within this tomb was no secret, nor was its location. In the 2nd century BCE, about 830 years after David was buried, the first known raid of the tomb occurred. As Josephus described it, Hasmonean leader Johanan Hyrcanus was under siege in Jerusalem by Antiochus VII of the Seleucid Empire. In desperation, he forged a truce agreement that involved a payment of 3,000 talents of silver. Having no other means of acquiring the money, Hyrcanus opened one room of David's sepulchre, withdrew 3,000 talents, and paid Antiochus. You can read this story in Antiquities of the Jews, Book 13, Chapter 8, Number 4. Hyrcanus only raided one room of the tombs. 100 years later, King Herod determined to pick up where Hyrcanus left off. Known for his vast building projects throughout Jerusalem, Herod had heard that Hyrcanus had left behind a tremendous amount of wealth. Josephus related that Herod planned a raid for some time. Then he opened that sepulchre by night and went into it, and endeavored that it should not be at all known in the city, but took only his most faithful friends with him. As for any money, he found none, as Hyrcanus had done, but that furniture of gold and those precious goods that were laid up there, all which he took away. Why did Herod do this secretly, at night? He certainly had enough power to do as he pleased in Jerusalem. Perhaps since he was half Jewish, his conscience prevented him from openly desecrating the tombs of the kings. Or maybe he knew that raiding the tombs in broad daylight would trigger a war with the Jews. The success of this plunder made Herod greedier. He had a great desire to make a more diligent search, and to go farther in, even as far as the very bodies of David and Solomon, Josephus wrote. However, as 2 of Herod's guards approached the bones of David and Solomon, according to Josephus, they were killed by a flame that burst out on them. By all appearances, God struck them dead. This supernatural jolt prompted Herod to abandon the project and to erect a monument. So he was terribly frightened and went out and built a propitiatory monument of that fright he had been in, and this of white stone, at the mouth of the sepulchre, and that at great expense also. Of the 3 tombs discovered in the Kidron Valley in 1989, 2 had stone doors with hinges sealing the entrance. One even had an intact locking device. Hinged stone doors are rare in the tombs of the Second Temple period. They are mostly found in the largest and most sumptuously appointed tombs, such as the tombs of the kings. This method of sealing burial chambers became more common in the late Roman period. Perhaps Herod built a huge impenetrable door blocking access to the tombs after the frightening incident involving his 2 guards. Maybe he erected a huge monument in front of a hinged door that was already there. In any event, the tomb was well fortified after those 2 robbers were struck dead. New finds suggest King David existed. Not counting those who believe in God, many people dismiss David and Solomon as mythological figures and believe no kingdom could have existed in the region at the time the Bible recounted their activities. That's why scientists have gone on a journey to find relics that prove the existence of a prosperous empire in the Bible. The official clay seals, or bullae, unearthed by Dr. Blakely's team at Khirbet Sumili, a small biblical period village, 10th to 8th century BC, located in the northern part of Israel's picturesque Negev desert, provide evidence that some type of government activity was conducted there in that period. These bullae were used to seal official correspondence in much the same way wax seals were used on official documents in later periods. said Dr. James Hardin of Mississippi State University, a team member and the lead author of the paper published in the journal Near Eastern Archaeology. The scientists describe Khirbet Sumili as a borderland area between the heartlands of Judah and Philistia. It was originally assumed to be a small Iron Age farmstead. However, the excavation of the Boulay and other recent finds indicate a level of political organization previously thought not to exist at that time. Our dates for the Boulay are based on multiple types of evidence we combine to determine a general 10th century BC date, Dr. Blakely added. The style of the Boulay, the types of ancient pottery found in the same contexts as the Boulay, the types of Egyptian scarabs found, the style of an Egyptian amulet, and the overall stratigraphy or layering of the site each suggested a 10th century date. Our dates for the Boulay are based on multiple types of evidence we combine to determine a general 10th century BC date. 2 of the Boulay the scientists excavated have complete seal impressions, 2 have partial seal impressions, and 2 others have none. 2 Boulay were blackened by fire. 1 bulla has a well-preserved hole where the string used to seal the document passed through the clay. The impressions in the bullae do not contain writing. Scientists are very positive that these bullae are associated with the Iron Age IEA, which dates to the 10th century BC and which lends general support to the historical veracity of David and Solomon as recorded in the Hebrew biblical texts. These appear to be the only known examples of bullae from the 10th century, making this discovery unique. The findings contribute significantly to an ongoing debate in the scientific community about whether governments or states existed in the early Iron Ages. The artifacts hold far-reaching implications for the growing number of scientists who maintain that such political organization occurred much later than biblical texts suggest. Some text scholars and archaeologists have dismissed the historic reliability of the biblical text surrounding Kings David and Solomon, such as recorded in the Bible in the books of Kings and 2 Samuel, which scholars often date to the Iron Age Ahaiae or 10th century BC. The fact that these bullae came off of sealed written documents shows that this site, located out on the periphery of pretty much everything, is integrated at a level far beyond subsistence. You have either political or administrative activities going on at a level well beyond those typical of a rural farmstead. King David is the chosen one. Excavation in recent years is bringing the history of Israel's kings, even as early as King David, back to life from the ancient soil of Jerusalem. A substantial portion of David's palace has been uncovered in the city of David. More excavation has yet to take place there. Will the tombs of the kings be located under that palace? It would be an electrifying discovery that would give even greater credence to the reliability of the historical account contained within the pages of the Bible. The importance of the discovery of King David's palace and tomb can be found in Psalm 16:9-11. Therefore my heart is glad, and my glory rejoices. My flesh also will dwell securely, for you will not abandon my soul to Sheol. You will not allow your Holy One to undergo decay. The opening of what is believed to be King David's tomb is a monumental event that could rewrite pages of history. After being sealed for millennia, the secrets it may hold have the potential to provide unprecedented insight into biblical times. What do you hope we'll learn from it? And how do you think it might impact our historical understanding? There will always be critics and skeptics of any history, particularly on something that is 3,000 years old. However, all the archaeology that has been discovered only reaffirms the Bible and what it says. David is in the divine line to Jesus from the tribe of Judah. The search for King David's tomb is of great interest to scientists partly because of the importance of this king to the Bible. He was God's anointed one. After he finished the work of creation, God rested on the 7th day and made it holy. As a result, the number 7 came to represent completion and perfection in every facet of ancient Jewish culture. We see that in the Feast of Tabernacles, which occurred for 7 days on the 7th month. The year of Jubilee, when debts were forgiven and property returned to its original owners, among other things, took place after 7 cycles of 7 years. The biblical authors present slightly different representations of David's immediate family. He was either Jesse's 7th son or his 8th. Scholars debate whether this represents a contradiction or if one of David's brothers was simply omitted, but that's not the point. David was not the firstborn son, a privileged position in Judaism, and the authors were intent on working in the number 7, associating David with holiness and God's perfect plan for his people. God's anointed one was the person he chose to lead and save his people. When the Israelites wanted a human king, the prophet Samuel anointed Saul to show that God had set him apart for this special role. Years later, when Saul disobeyed God, God rejected him as king, and it was time for God to choose someone else. So he sent Samuel to Jesse of Bethlehem, telling him, "I have chosen one of his sons to be king." Samuel thought he would know whom God had chosen by their appearance and assumed the oldest, Eliab, was clearly the chosen one. But God told Samuel that he doesn't use the same factors as people when it comes to choosing kings. Earlier, Samuel had prophesied to Saul, "The Lord has sought out a man after his own heart and appointed him ruler of his people because you have not kept the Lord's command." And when Samuel laid eyes upon Jesse's youngest son, the shepherd David, the Lord said, "Rise and anoint him, this is the one." When Samuel anointed David, it didn't instantly make him king, but it did signal that he was the Lord's chosen one, and from that day on, the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon David. "And have done ever since the time I appointed leaders over my people Israel. I will also give you rest from all your enemies. The Lord declares to you that the Lord himself will establish a house for you. When your days are over and you rest with your ancestors, I will raise up your offspring to succeed you, your own flesh and blood, and I will establish his kingdom. He is the one who will build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever." For around 1,000 years after David's death, the Israelites continued to remember this promise given to David and looked for their coming Messiah, the son of David, who would fulfill this prophecy. However, God promised David that he would establish a house for him and that there would come someone from his house who would reign forever. This would be the Messiah, the Lord Jesus Christ, who would come from David's house. Christ fulfilled this prophecy. His tomb was empty, and Christ never saw decay. He will reign forever, and his kingdom will have no end.